Hi, Tim Johnston from Books on Site. Welcome to another edition of our tips for bookkeeping. I'm going to talk today about types of supplies for GST, and I'll go through the different types of supplies and give you a few examples as well. The first most common type are your taxable sales. So if you're registered for GST or required to be registered in Australia, the goods and services you sell are generally taxable unless they're either GST free or input taxed. So for those taxable sales, you have to include the GST of 10% in your price, issue a tax invoice to your buyer, and then you have to pay the GST to the ATO once you've lodged your BAS. If you're making a GST supply, you can also claim input tax credits for the invoices that you've paid GST on. So, for example, if you bought something wholesale and sold at retail, you can claim a credit for the GST in the wholesale price. So you do this in your BAS when you lodge your BAS. So you get your 10% off on your supplies that you've paid through the wholesaler. So the next type of supply that I'm going to look at is GST-free supplies. Now, GST-free and input tax, there's both zero GST on these invoices. They're for supplies which the Act does not require GST to be charged on. So, look, the main difference between GST-free and input tax supplies is that if you're in the business of providing a service that is a GST-free supply, you can actually also claim input tax credits on your purchases required to provide that supply. However, if your business is providing input tax supplies, and examples of input tax supplies are really financial supplies, interest received, residential rent, that kind of thing. If your business is providing one of these input tax supplies, unfortunately, you're not allowed to claim input tax credits on the supplies that you've used to provide this service. So that's the main difference. On the BAS, you do code them separately, so they are reported separately on the BAS. They're both 0%, but the ATO does require you to actually report those supplies and sales as well. So that's taxable supplies. We've talked about the two non-taxable supplies being GST-free and input tax. And the final type of supply is what we call out-of-scope supply. So if we've got a transaction, when we enter it, you might see it's coded non-taxable. So these are supplies that are not goods or services that are within the scope of the GST Act. So for examples of that are wages, depreciation, superannuation, loan payments. So if you've got any, directors' loans or intercompany loans within your company, or even just loans to the bank, they're all excluded and out of the scope of taxable supplies. Stamp duty is another one of those that can get confused. Sometimes we see that coded as free, but that's actually a non-taxable supply. So yeah, look, they're the main types of supplies. Really important to get those coded correctly on your BAS. If you ever do get audited, which we've had one or two clients that have had the misfortune of being subjected to an ATO audit, they will really look thoroughly at your coding, and they want to see that you have coded those correctly. So even if there's no GST on an invoice that you receive, you do have to be careful to make sure you code it either GST free, input tax, or non-taxable supply. Thanks for watching, and feel free to contact us if you have any questions.